Trauma Informed Pedagogy. Trauma Informed Pedagogy is a new terminology used by the educators in times of crisis. What kind of, for example, like COVID-19, teachers need to embrace pedagogies which give hope and celebrate students' creativity, not their grades. So, if teachers are well informed about such kind of pedagogies which give hope to students and they encouraged students to focus on their creativity rather than focusing on their grades. So, such kind of pedagogical engagements of teachers are known as trauma informed pedagogies. So, in this lecture and the series of similar lectures, I will try to make meaning of the terms used for such kind of situations, like what is trauma informed and trauma informed models, effects of trauma on students, teachers' awareness and their skills and positive attitude towards trauma informed pedagogies and their strategies to develop trauma informed pedagogies in their teaching learning context. So, I will focus what is the meaning of trauma. When we look at the term trauma, um, you can see what the literature is talking about the meaning of trauma. Events or series of events or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individuals in the form of their physical uh, situations and their emotional attachments and all kind of the situations. If such kind of situation happens with a student, with a learner, so that could be called as trauma. So the meaning of trauma is you can make meaning of the trauma in this way. So that a kind of situation which creates a problem, which creates a harmful effect on an individual mentally, physically, or emotionally, or even spiritually. So you can call is trauma. So this is the literal meaning of the trauma. When we look at in the context of teaching learning situations, so yet another meaning that is associated with this trauma, you can see from the slide that the researchers have come up with the meaning that an overwhelming experience that undermines one's belief that the world is good or safe and can dramatically and negatively affect a student's educational trajectory. So when you think about uh, yourself, about your own situation, that the world is good and safe, and at the same time that has a dramatically negative effects on your educational uh, uh, field, so you can make sense of that kind of trauma for that students. So what is trauma informed? If someone is developing a clear understanding meaning of the term trauma, so what is the meaning of trauma informed? So trauma informed is basically um, in any context, it is to understand the ways in which violence, victimization, and other traumatic experience may have impacted the lives of the individual involved, and to apply that understanding to the design of the system and provision of the services so they can accommodate trauma survivors. So, according to Cirillo and Butler's definition of trauma informed means if you, as an educator, as an experienced guide, if you are well aware of the situation, that has severe implications for the individuals who have been experienced trauma, and how you as an experienced individual, experienced educator or a counselor can accommodate those affected students, those trauma affected learners, and how to accommodate them, how to help those survivors, how to bring hope to those people. So if you are well aware of this situation, so this could be called a trauma informed. So the why we think about this trauma informed for teachers specifically in teacher learning situations. So when you look at the very early childhood education to tertiary level, so the learners, once they experience such kind of trauma situations in their lives, so they become hopeless. So they lose their strength, they lose their hope, and they become demotivated towards learning. So in such situations, teachers as a pedagogical leader need need to develop trauma informed uh, strategies that can help the learner to uh, to gain that hope, to come up with a certain objectives in the life, to face the challenge which is confronting in their lives. So if you can develop this sort of resilience in those learners, so they give hope to those students in their lives. So to develop resilience, that refers to the ability to draw upon available internal and external resources in order to overcome the adversity in their life. So that's why this trauma informed uh, situations for teachers is important. If the teacher, if there is a pedagogical leader, if the guide is a facilitator, if that teacher is well informed about these sort of the trauma situations in the life of the learners, so they can develop resilience in the students. They build their ability to face those challenges and come to the normal lives, so that they can continue their learning. So trauma has many diverse adverse effects on human beings, and teachers need to know trauma informed approaches to help students to develop their ability. So because of many uh, severe effects of trauma on individuals, particularly the young students, young learners in their lives, so the teachers need to be well aware of these situations which have such kind of adverse effects on the learners. So when the teachers will become well aware of these situations, they would be able to come up with some improved version, some modified versions of the teaching, which focuses on their situations, which develops a humanistic approach in their teaching, which develops a kind of humility and humanity in their teaching, which develops a kind of hope and trust in teachers. Because when a child, when a learner who is trauma affected develops a kind of trust in teachers. So this is the technique that the teachers are using while engaging a learner who is affected by trauma in their teaching learning practices. So if the teachers have this sort of skill, this sort of ability that enables students to come up with some sort of hope in their lives and face those kind of trauma affected situations. So that's how a teacher can make a meaning for the student. So there are six principles which, according to this mental health association's rules and research findings, there are six basic principles of trauma informed approaches. First and the most important approach that is used is safety. When you will ensure in your teaching and learning activities that the safety of the trauma affected child is at the top of the list. So there, the child, if the child is a child develops a feeling of safety, this means that you are well informed, trauma informed teacher. So you are using the first principle of trauma informed approach to teaching. The second important principle of trauma informed approach is trustworthiness and transparency. If the child feels that uh, this teaching learning engagement has trust trustworthy engagement and there is a transparency, there is no any doubt, there is no any mistrust in this whole situation. Whatever the teacher is discussing, whatever the teacher is informing, whatever the teacher is guiding a learner, that the child is starting trusting in teacher and that child feels transparency in this whole process of teaching learning activity. So this means that you have fulfilled the second most important principle of trauma informed approach to teaching and learning. The third most important principle of trauma informed approach to teaching is peer support. In such sort of situations, when many students who are trauma affected and they seek support from each other, they start extending support to each other. As a pedagogical leader, if the teacher creates conditions in the classroom or in online teaching learning activities, so in such sort of like COVID-19 situations where we teachers are teaching online through Google Meet classes. So in such sort of situations, if teacher develops circumstances, develops conditions which enable students, trauma affected students, to extend their support to their peers. So this means that you are a uh, well-informed, trauma-informed teacher. So you are using the principle of peer support. So that is the third most important principle that creates, a condition for the students to extend their support. The fourth one is collaboration and mutuality. Collaboration and mutuality is very important in such sort of situations because when you, as a teacher, trauma informed teacher, and your pedagogical approach develops a sort of collaborative engagement with your students as well as the students themselves in the form of peer support, and they start building trust with each other, trust in each other, and they feel safety. They develop a sort of teaching learning as a collaborative endeavor. So in this way, they they start working collectively and support each other. A sort of collaboration and mutuality develops. The fifth one is empowerment, voice, and choice. This is again yet important principle of trauma informed teaching and learning approach. When you, as a uh, critical creative pedagogist, when you use uh, culturally responsive pedagogies, culturally responsive pedagogies means pedagogies, the teaching learning approaches, which which is contextually, which is culturally very relevant and feasible, acceptable, and that is enabling for the students, and which creates conditions to empower them rather than uh, you know just making students as recipient of the information, but enabling them to share whatever they have the information, build on their experiences, share their voices with the other peers and teachers, and and the situations in the online classrooms or in the face-to-face classrooms where their voice is valued, where their voice is listened carefully, where their voice is heard among the peers and by the teacher, and they have a choice to you know say something and convince their teacher and peers based on their experience. If you create such kind of situations in your teaching and learning situations, teaching and learning endeavors, so this sort of support develops a kind of empowerment in students. They feel valued human being, and they have their voice in both the teaching and learning activities. So in this way, you provide them a chance to uh, groom, a chance to build their hope again in their lives. The sixth important principle is cultural, historical, and gender issues. This important principle of trauma informed approach to teaching and learning is very important because you, as a pedagogical leader, must be well aware of the cultural context of the learners and their historical background of the learners and the gender related issues with the learners. If you, as an informed, well informed pedagogist, use all these lenses, cultural lens, historical perspective lens, and gender issues related uh, situations in your teaching and learning, and based on all these kind of things, when you have an individualized uh, focus on all students, eh, on their individual needs, this means that you are empowering your students, you are bringing all those trauma affected students into a normal life where they can face the challenges of trauma like COVID-19 situations which we are currently facing in the world. So if you, as an experienced pedagogical leader, you are well aware of all these kind of important principles, and you apply all these principles in your teaching and learning situations, so you help those trauma affected students, develops their hope, and you ensure how the powerful learning of the students is possible. So these are the basic principles of trauma-informed approaches to teaching and learning. And in the next coming classes, we will look at what kind of the effects of trauma on students and how you as a teacher can help them to uh, uh, address these sort of effects, and what kind of situations you face when you encounter with students who have some long lasting effects of the trauma on students, and how you help those students. So in the next class, we will try to focus on these sort of things, trauma effects on the students, and we will develop our strategies. How can we address those problems and bring those students out of those severe situations in their